get to go as long as you want.
Okay. What casino are you in?
I'm at the Stratosphere.
Which is where?
In Las Vegas, right on the Strip, close to downtown Vegas.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I live down in this area of town, and that has its good and bad side, as we all know. Facebook. I'm going to say hello to the Facebook people, Tom, and then I'll get back to introducing you, and then we'll do the interview. So bear with me just a minute here.
Sure.
Facebook, this is the moment every interviewer waits for and hopes for. And today I'm so lucky that Mr. Tom Dreesen, the legend, is here. You can see over here, he's associated very strongly with Frank Sinatra. I'll get to his intro here. Welcome to Comic Spot. This is gonna put me on the map. This is gonna actually get me $1 coming in today, I'm sure. You guys, you are so lucky to have a real legend. If you're young and you don't know who Frank Sinatra is, shame on you. Go Google Frank Sinatra and Tom Dreesen, please. You want us old people to be woke. You guys aren't woke. Get woke. So we're going to talk about that. So let me read the introduction I have for the Tom Dreesen. Mr. Tom Dreesen has made over 500 appearances on national TV as a stand-up comedian, including 61 appearances on the Tonight Show. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. And he has been a favorite on the David Letterman Show with 50 appearances there. He actually got to host when David Letterman was away on vacation or whatever. He's hosted in place of David Letterman. Yes. So he has also toured for 14 years. Have you ever done anything for 14 years? I haven't. Tom Dreesen toured the country, maybe the world. We'll find out. He toured with Frank Sinatra. Google it too, young people. You don't want to miss out on history. So let's get into Mr. Tom Dreesen, his life, his legacy, his trajectory. I want to hear it all today. We get to go as long as he wants to go. Welcome to the stage, Tom Dreesen.
Thank you.
My gosh.
Thank you, Linda. I really appreciate your introduction. Whenever people call you a legend, I think that just means that all your critics have died. You know, all the critics died. So you become a legend because your critics are no longer around. But thank you. First of all, let me explain. My backdrop here is an artist from Buenos Aires named Marcelo Nira. Brilliant artist, famous artist. And he captured this every night when I appeared in Las Vegas or in Atlantic City or Reno or Tahoe. Anytime we appeared in a casino, when I would finish my show and walk off stage right, Frank would enter stage right, and we would crisscross. When he got to center stage, as the orchestra was vamping, he would call me back to take another bow, and I'd take what they call a half bow. I'd go halfway out, I'd bow. He'd say, Tommy, come on back. Tommy Dreesen, there's my man. And I would wave at him, and he would, he would nod back at me. Now, that's what Marcelo Nira captured that of me coming back on stage. And it's a painting he did of us and sent it to me. It's in my living room. So now it's my backdrop on Zoom broadcast. So
beautiful. So beautiful, the artwork. So let's talk about your life, because I know a lot of people associate you with David Letterman Show and with Frank Sinatra, but there was a Tom Dreesen that was a little boy once. And when you were first born, did you come out of the womb telling jokes? When did that happen?
Well, let me see. My memory is really good, but yeah, about 10 seconds after, I remember coming out of the womb. No, not at all. You know what? I grew up on the south side of Chicago, a suburb called Harvey, Illinois. Harvey in those days was steel mills and factories and a blue collar town. And they had so many different factories that the men and women worked in. And then also there was like 36 taverns where they all went to the tavern. So it was a thriving little metropolis. And I grew up learning that you only deserve in life what you work for, but I had 8 brothers and sisters, and we lived in a shack. We were very poor, raggedy poor. If a window broke, you stuck a rag in it. If you had holes in your shoes, you put cardboard in it. And by the time I was 8 years old, I had a shoe shine box, and I was going around the neighborhoods and shining shoes in all the taverns to help raise money to feed my brothers and sisters. And none of this do I regret, by the way. I sold newspapers. Later on, I set pins in bowling alleys. Brothers and sisters. When I was on my hands and knees in those jukebox, in those bars on the jukebox, Frank Sinatra was on the jukebox singing. It's the first time I heard him when I was 8 years old. The book that I wrote, Still Standing, My Journey from Streets and Saloons to the Stage and Sinatra, is about the journey of this little boy who, like I say, came up very poor and shining shoes in bars, and he heard Frank Sinatra on the jukebox. And the book takes you from that little boy hearing Frank Sinatra in Harvey, Illinois, to one day carrying his coffin out of a church in Beverly Hills, California. So it takes you on that journey, and all the hardships that happen in between there, and all the joy, so it's what life is. It's ups and downs, and the title's Still Standing. I've been knocked down a lot in my life, and physically knocked down, as the book will explain, as well as being knocked down in the business, but I kept getting back up again. And for 50 years now, I've been in show business. I've been a stand-up comedian for 50 years. I'm still standing. Everything that life threw at me, I'm still standing. And the book is full of stories of that, my years in the service, the coming out of the service, the struggle I was with a comedy team. My first partner was as a black man named Tim Reed. We were America's first black and white comedy team. History shows we were the last. So we toured the nation. There were no comedy clubs in those days. So it was 1969 to 75. Now, by the way, at that era, it's not unlike what's going on now. There were riots all over the country in the late 60s. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. Martin Luther King was assassinated. The students were protesting the Vietnam War. I had just gotten out of the military, and Tim had just gotten out of college. So we were touring the nation while this was all going on, and this turmoil. Wherever there was racial tension, we went there. If it was colleges, high schools, we would go there and make people laugh. We didn't preach. We just wanted to see that these two guys could get along together. We did 11 prisons in 1 year. Anywhere there was racial tension, that's where we went. And the team stayed together 6 years. And then after the team split up, I ended up being broke out on the West Coast. I had a wife and 3 kids in Chicago. I was on my rear end, and I ended up being broke, and I slept in an old abandoned car. It wasn't my car. It was a Nash Rambler that was up on blocks, and the front seat came down, so I used that as a bed. And I would wash up in a gas station and hitchhike every night to the comedy store, begging to work for free. And it took a long time, but I finally got the Tonight Show to come and see me. A guy named Craig Tennis. I ended up getting my first appearance on the Tonight Show, which changed my whole life. I got bumped 3 times, but I kept coming back. They kept running out of time. And the 4th time I went, I was in the makeup room, and Fred DeCordova, the producer, came in and said, "I got bad news for you." And I said, "What?" He said, "You're going on tonight." So now the thing about that, Linda, is that in 1975, wherever you went in America, people say, "What do you do for a living?" You say, "I'm a stand-up comedian." The next question out of their mouth was, "Oh yeah, have you ever been on Johnny Carson?" And if you hadn't been on Johnny Carson, in the eyes of America, you just weren't a comedian. You might want to be one, you might going to be one, but right now you weren't. 26 million people watched that show in those days. Television was a lot smaller. There was no cable TV. So one appearance, Freddie Prinze got a sitcom the next day. I did one appearance, and the next day CBS signed me to a development deal. A guy named Lee Curlin from New York saw me, and my whole life changed. I've never stopped working from that first Tonight Show. And as you pointed out, I did 61 appearances on the Tonight Show. And my life is, it's been even hardships through that, going through a divorce and all these other things, but I'm still here, and I'm still smiling, and I'm still standing.
So you're available?
Oh, yeah.
Is that what I'm getting out all this? Ladies, he's available.
If they'll buy more books, then I'm available. But the truth is, I'm dating a girl that I've been dating for a long time from my hometown, Harvey, Illinois. And she's a sweetheart.
Oh, that's wonderful. So what branch of the service were you in?
I served in the Navy 4 years. on 2 aircraft carriers, the USS Essex and the USS Tarawa. But I also served in a Marine Corps unit for 9 months called NEGDF, Naval Emergency Ground Defense Force. I trained at Quonset Point.
What was your MOS, Tom?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
What was your military occupational skill, your MOS?
It was drinking beer and chasing women every port we hit. On the carriers, I worked in supplies, you know, and oftentimes I had to go off the carrier, being launched off the carrier in the what they call cod flights, because there were some things the Navy didn't stock, and we had to get them from civilian manufacturers. So I'd have to go fly off the carrier to purchase these items and bring them back and land back on the carrier, which I have to tell you, when you're 17 and 18 years old, you're bulletproof. But when I look back over what I did, I wouldn't do it today. I'll tell you that, you know.
Yes. Are you familiar with the fact that I'm an Army veteran?
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yes,
I should have known when you said, what was your MOS? I should have known that, you know.
I tried to give you a hint, but I was, you know, being silly. So I was a finance clerk in Germany in 1973.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I had to go there. My parents survived the Holocaust, the one that existed. So we're winning, and it's the only way I can make fun of it. And so I had to go there and see Germany and the camps because I had heard so much about them. So that was my motive. Plus, I loved my country.
And I do too. And I, you know, I'm a patriot. I perform for the troops. I've gone to Iraq and to Al Tagaram and to Fallujah and Kuwait, and I perform for our men and women over there because if it wasn't for the United States military, there would be no United States of America, and that's a fact. That's a fact.
Thank you for serving our country, and thank you for serving up jokes to the military. You're a real hero to me for doing that.
Wow, no, I'm not. But thank you for serving your country too. They're heroes. You know that. You know that only like less than 1% of the population of the United States serve in the armed forces. 0.5%. So it's a different military than when I was in. You know, and again, these men and women over there, what they're doing to keep us safe.
Yes.
You know. We you know that freedom isn't free. It's hard to talk to young people today about this, but freedom isn't free. They've been brainwashed in our colleges not even know. Do you know they come out of college and they don't know the difference between World War II and the Civil War? They really don't. I mean, for the most part, and it's tragic. It's sad because you know why. I mean, you know, you can argue with me about wars if you want to. You can't argue with me about World War II. If it wasn't for those men and women, we'd be in concentration camps. There was no doubt what Imperial Japan had in mind for this country, and there was no doubt what Adolf Hitler had in mind for this country. And those men and women, they sacrificed everything. Those at home and those overseas. You know, it pains me that our youth do not know, and I made sure my children knew what that freedom is. And that the real heroes are over there on Normandy, underneath tombstones, underneath crosses, you know, in the graves. You know, they gave up. They were 17 and 18 years old. You know, our young kids today. I'm getting political here. Forgive me, but
go ahead.
Our young kids today are asking for a safe space because they didn't like who was elected president of the United States, so they wanted to have a safe space. You know, when if they will look back when their grandfathers or their great grandfathers were the same age as them. You know, they were in places called Macon Island, Normandy, Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal. They were in places like that. Now, those kids never heard of those places because their teachers never taught them. You know, and what they were doing, they were seeing their fellow soldiers and Marines getting their arms shut off and their legs shut off or dying on the beaches at 17, 18, and 19 when these kids were going to proms and going to college. Not once did those people that saved this nation ever once ask for a safe space.
Never.
How dare you? How dare you ask for that, not knowing the history? If you knew all the history of our country and you asked for a safe space, I'd say, okay, you're entitled to that. They died so that you would have that. But you don't even know why you have freedom today.
So true.
End of lecture. Forgive me. I'm a comedian. I'm supposed to make everybody laugh, but I'm also an American patriot.
Absolutely. I thank you for saying what you just said. You said it very eloquently. You know, in the military, there are things that you have to endure, and people that have not served the country don't know what it's like. And when you go and you entertain the troops, Tom, I'm sure you've had military people who are lonely, sad, depressed, unappreciated, forgotten, that have come up to you after a show and said amazing things to you, maybe only to you in their whole life, and you will never forget conversations you've had one on one. Do you recall some of those? Because everybody that's done comedy for the troops has a story or two or three.
Yeah, well, I remember, I remember so many stories and so much appreciation that they had, but I remember David Letterman like put me in charge of the show. When I went over with David, he said, okay, David emceed and Paul Schaefer performed, and we had some other acts, but ahead of time, I got a hold of the military bases and had them rehearse God Bless America. So at the end of the show, they had some people that could sing and sing lead. We had the troops come up on stage, men and women, and sang, God Bless America to the audience, and of course to the people back home. And that just, it gave me chills watching these kids. There's Irish and Italian, and there's African American, and there's Jewish, and there's Mexican. There's all these different races, creeds, religions, and they were united in singing that song, God Bless America. And that moved me a great deal. Another time I was getting ready to go on stage in Altagadam, and they had been receiving incoming. And so the first sergeant said to me, Mr. Dreesen, just as they were ready, David Letterman was introducing me. He said, Mr. Dreesen, I said, yes, Sergeant. He said, in the event we get some incoming during the show, there's a bunker right here. Jump down in the bunker. And David was introducing me, and I looked at the first sergeant and I said, whatever happened to have a good show?
That's funny.
On a sad note, a few years later, I was in New York doing the David Letterman show. And after the show, I came outside to get into the car, and a guy stopped me, and he said, I was overseas, and I was in Fallujah when you came there, and you made us laugh. And he said, and my buddy was sitting next to me, and he laughed so hard at what some of the stuff you were saying. He was laughing so hard. He said, after you left, he was killed. And he said, whenever I think of him, I think of how hard he was laughing at you. I don't think about the way it happened. I always close my eyes. I imagine him laughing so hard at you. He said, and that was probably the last time he left. That moved me more than you'll ever know. And it's moving me now, as a matter of fact, as I'm talking about it. But I'm Irish Italian, and I'll digress. Frank Sinatra once said to me, because I'm half Sicilian, and so is he. He once said to me, Sicilians don't cry, Tommy, in public, they cry alone. I said, oh. I said, but I'm half Irish. He said, well, Irish cry when they change bus drivers, so. He's right about that,
He had a sense of humor.
Oh, yeah. Well, a sense of humor, though. Here's my definition, Linda. First of all, I give motivation speeches on 4 subjects. Aside from being a stand-up comedian, which is what I am first, last, and always, I give motivation speeches to corporate America, to colleges, but on 4 subjects: perception, visualization, self-talk, and develop a sense of humor. And I elaborate on those 4 points. But a sense of humor, by my humble definition, is not when you have the ability to laugh at others' shortcomings or misfortunes, when you have the ability to laugh at your own. So when you can laugh at yourself. And Frank could do that. Frank, he had a way of, one night we were in a bar in Rancho Mirage in the desert in Palm Springs area. And it was a bar we hung around called Chaplin's Bar. Sidney Chaplin, he actually was a son of Charlie Chaplin. And he was up in years, and he owned this little bar. And Frank and I would hang out in the bar, and he would give Frank the keys. He would go home and say, and Frank would always leave the money for him. Sometimes the bartender would stay with us because Frank tipped $100, whatever you brought him. If you brought him a Jack Daniels, Jack in the Splash, you got $100. If you brought him a pack of cigarettes, you got $100, a pack of Camels. He didn't show off. He'd slip it to you privately. So, in fact, I'm going another way to get to a sense of humor, but on another level, one time he was coming out of Mame San restaurant in Los Angeles, and the valet parker pulled his car up, and Frank said, "What's the biggest tip you ever got?" And the kid said $100, and Frank took two $100 bills and gave it to the kid. He said, "By the way, who gave you the $100?" He said, "You did last Friday, Mr. Sinatra." But getting back to a sense of humor, when we were in this bar that night, we would lock the door, and Frank would lock the door, and we'd sit there till like 5 or 6 in the morning, and because the bar closed at 2 o'clock. Well, he forgot to lock the door one night, and after closing hours, a station wagon pulled on the side door, and I was talking to Frank, looking over his shoulder, and I saw the station wagon, and I was thinking, well, the door will be locked, but the woman come walking in the door, he had forgot to lock the door, and she came up right behind Frank Sinatra, and she said, "Excuse me, do they have a jukebox in here?" And Frank turned around, and he said, "What?" And he looked her right in the face, and she said, "Do they have a jukebox in here?" And Frank looked around the bar, and he said, "No, I don't think so." He said, "I'll sing for you." She said, "No, thanks." And she turned around and she walked out.
Oh my God.
He walks out. Now, I said to him, "She obviously didn't recognize you." He said, "Maybe she did." Maybe she did. So he had a sense of humor about himself, you know.
Yes.
So, comic spot, I love it. I know you've loved it. Let's keep it going. I need your help. I developed it so you out there can get to know comics, whether they're brand new or 45 years in the biz. We're going to get to know them so you'll know who to love. So all I need you to do is donate to my Cash App, and that is Linda Marcus Smith. I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
So did he open up and share? Like, were you tight with him? Were you golfing buddies, or was it strictly business? Or
Well, when I first started touring with him, he was the boss of this tour. Obviously, the great Frank Sinatra. He was the boss of the tour, and everybody everybody referred to him as the old man. Now, not OLD, as you know, aboard ship or in the service, the captain is the old man. You know, that's how you refer to the general. The old man will be here. It was OLMAN. You know,
yes.
it's a title of prestige. So he was the old man. He was a skipper of this tour. But as I toured, when little years went by, we started hanging out more, and he became like a buddy. And then toward the end of his life, he was more like a father to me. But we would hang out, and when I would stay at his house down in Rancho Mirage, he had a compound down there, big, beautiful compound with all these, he had swimming pools and tennis courts and a main house. But he had bungalows on the outer perimeter down in along Tamarisk Golf Course. And the bungalows were named after his songs: New York, New York, Strangers in the Night, Tender Trap, My Way. And I would stay down there like 6 times a year. Him and I, whatever we did, if we did shows down there or we didn't have shows, we just hung out. He would never go to bed till the sun came up. He never went to bed, whether on the road or off the road, till the sun came up. He was nocturnal, you know. And when the sun came up, he went to bed. So he would want me to hang out with him some nights. We'd hang out, we'd drive around the desert in a car. I would drive, and he would open up to me then. And as time went by, he opened up to me more and more. And then toward the end of his life, he was getting kind of melancholy, and he talked a lot about his childhood and growing up in Hoboken. Yeah, we had, I'll tell you a funny story. One night we were riding around, and he told me something really personal, something that after he told it to me, he said, "I shouldn't have told you that." I said, "Well, it won't go any further than this car." He said, I know, but I shouldn't have told you that. And I said, "Well, it's not going to go any further than the car. And besides, it's not like we're strangers, you know, we're friends. You know, we're strangers." And I said, "We're not strangers, we're friends." And I don't know what made me do it. I was driving back toward the compound, and I looked at him and I said, "Strangers in the night, exchanging glances." He said, "Oh my God, if you're going to sing that song, get in key." You know, he said, he started singing to me, "Strangers in the night, exchanging glances." I said, "Wandering in the night, what were the chances?" And we were going back and forth. Now we pulled into the compound, and he always pat me on the cheek. He said, "Good night, Tom." Good night. He pat me on the cheek. And as I was going to my bungalow, if I went back to my old neighborhood and I told the guys that hung out in the bars with me, you know, I was just riding around with Frank Sinatra and we were singing "Strangers in the Night," they'd say, "Get the hell out of here with that BS," you know, but it happened. And it's a moment I'll never forget.
Oh, that's so amazing. And you were on David Letterman show 61 times, and you got to stand in for him when he was absent for whatever reason. So speak to me about the relationship you developed with David Letterman. He's such an enigma.
Well, you know, Dave I did the Tonight Show 61 times, but I did David Show over 50 times. But
Okay.
David and I became friends. We became friends back in the days when we both started out at the Comedy Store. David, I had been with a comedy team, as I pointed out earlier, for 6 years, and now I was on my own. And David pulled up, came out there one night in a red pickup truck. He drove all the way from Indianapolis, you know, and I came off stage and he saw my set and he complimented me in the parking lot. So we became friends from that point on. Now, what I want to say to you is that's how we became friends. But he called me about a month ago. I'll tell you a funny story. He called me about a month ago and he said, you know, Tom, every time I do an interview or you do an interview and people say, how did we meet? We tell that same story. You came off stage, I complimented you, and we became friends. And I said, yeah. He said, well, it's a boring story. I said, well, but it's the truth. He said, I don't care. It's boring. He said, from now on, tell people you came off stage and you had just done your set. You came off stage. I was in the parking lot and I had stolen some material from you and you beat the hell out of me in the parking lot. I said, now why would I tell a story like that? He said, because it's a better story. I said, but David, you got 32 million fans. Do you think I want them chasing me through airports because I beat the hell out of you? He said, but it's a better story. That's what I'm telling from now on, he said. Now, 2 weeks go by and he called me and he said, Tom, can you help me out? He said, do you know the governor of Illinois? And I said, gee, I don't know him. I met him, but I don't know him. He said, well, my wife, Regina, has a friend, a woman friend who has a son who has autism. He's an adult. And these adults with autism, they have a little plot of land where they plant corn and beans and stuff like that and tomatoes. And when it comes into fruition, they give it to the homeless. I said, oh, that's wonderful. He said, yeah, but now the state's going to come and take that away. So I need to talk to the governor. I want to lobby against that. I said, well, gee, I know the Senate Majority Leader, John Cullerton. Let me call him. So I called John. He was in the General Assembly at that time, Illinois General Assembly. He said, oh, I know all about that. Don't worry. Tell David we're fixing that. And he was explaining to me how. I said, John, could I have Dave Letterman call you so you could explain it to him? He said, sure. And I started to hang up. I said, oh, John, do me a favor. When you tell Dave you're going to help him, tell him the only reason you're doing this is because Dreesen beat the parking lot at the Comedy Store. He said, okay, he's a game guy. Now, they talk. 10 minutes go by, my phone rings. I pick it up and it's Letterman. Didn't I tell you that's a better story? I told you that's a better story. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love David Letterman's comedy. He's kind of, isn't he kind of a prankster in general?
You know, he wrote the foreword to my book. You know, my book's still standing here. Let me give you a cheap plug there. Let me see if you can see this here. Can you see this?
Yes, I can.
It fades in and out. Anyhow, it's
yes.
still standing. Yeah, my journey from the streets and saloons to the stage and Sinatra. But David wrote the foreword to it.
Okay.
And it is typical David Letterman hysteria. I mean, it's really funny and poignant, you know. He's the best.
Yes, he is. It took me, you know, his style of comedy took me a while to get used to. I didn't like it at first. Yeah. And then I was just enamored and I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, it's when you really, he has a Midwestern quality. It's no secret that the most successful talk show hosts, percentage-wise, have come from the Midwest. You know, I mean, Jack Paar came from the Midwest. Johnny Carson came from the Midwest. Not Merv Griffin. Merv came from California, but he had a Midwestern quality about him. But Mike Douglas came from the Midwest. Phil Donahue came from the Midwest. Oprah Winfrey came from the Midwest. You know, that it seems like that wears well over a period of years. And David has that Midwestern boy next door who is a prankster. Who, you know, you got to be on your toes when you came on that show, you know, because David, even though they might prepare questions and say, you know, ask Tom about his dog, if David didn't want to do that, he'd go wherever he wanted to go. So you better be prepared, you know.
Yes, he's a very dear person, you know, to the American people because he's different.
Yeah, you can't expose yourself to that many people without picking up critics. Me as a comedian as well, I know. You know, when I toured with Sammy Davis Jr., I toured with him for 3 years, you know, and he had a sign hanging in his dressing room I'll never forget. It said, I don't know the meaning of success, but I do know the meaning of failure. It's when I try to make everybody love me. And you can't do that if you're a bartender, a truck driver, or a bricklayer. If you're going to expose yourself to millions every night, you're going to pick up some enemies. You know, Wayne Dyer, I did a lot of shows with him. I don't know if you remember him. He wrote
Motivational.
Yeah, motivation. I love Wayne Dyer. But he once said, he said, you know, 50% of all the people you meet in your life aren't going to like you. They're not going to actively campaign against you, but they're just not going to like you. Maybe not the way you look, the way you talk, the way you walk. But, you know, and 50% are going to love you. So if you live in a town of 100 people, probably 50 of them do not like you. You know, they're not going to actively campaign, but they just don't think you're that great. And 50 people will like you, but expose yourself to millions every night. That means, you know, millions of people aren't going to like you.
Wow.
You know, you only, and I tell this to young comedians all the time. That's what you have to keep in mind. You can't make everybody love you. Do what you do it the best, you know, and go out there and put yourself on the line, risk, you know, because you're not going to make everybody love you. You know, if you're a comedian and you get a standing ovation, there's 500 people in the room and you just crush that night and they stand. I guarantee you 420 of them stood because they thought you really deserved that. 60 of them stood because they got up because everybody else got up, and 20 of them just wanted to get the hell out of there. You know, so you're not going to make everybody love you. And the other thing I tell young comedians is the number one failure of most comedians when they start out is they compare themselves to another comedian. They will say, gee, I started out with Linda and Linda's already doing this talk show. And I, you know, her and I started at the same time. And I tell them, you don't compare yourself to another comedian. There's a great Hindu proverb that said, there's nothing noble about being superior to another man. True nobility lies in being superior to your former self.
Whoa.
Am I a better friend than I was last year? Am I a better son than I was last year? Am I a better husband than I was last year? Am I a better father than I was last year? Am I a better comedian than I was last year? So your only competition through your whole life is your former self. That's your only competition. Because people will say to me sometimes, gee, you know, when I give motivation speeches, and I'll tell them, I stand in front of you as a success. And that's why I came here today, to tell you the principles I use to become a success. Now, a lot of people would say, you know what, Tom Dreesen, you're a success. You started out with Jay Leno and you started out with David Letterman. And more people know them and they've got way more money than you'll ever have. And I say, but I've never been in competition with David Letterman or Jay Leno. You know, you only want to be, if your name is Tom Dreesen and you're a comedian, you just want to be the best Tom Dreesen you can be. You know, if your name is Jack Smith, you want to be the best Jack Smith you can be, not better than Jay or David, not better than anybody, just the best you can be. So that's my advice.
I love that. So I got hit by a drunk driver in '96 and sustained brain trauma.
Oh my.
And so the first 5.5 years of my comedy, I would take notes up on stage and explain why. And then a minute would go by and then I'd be looking at my notes for the next joke and the next joke. I sucked. And when I quit talking about the brain injury on stage and trusted people like Gladys Simon in New York and different people that tried to help me, people tried to push me to go up without my notes and trust that I'm funny. And out of that came some kind of persona. I know my lane now. And this is just the last 6 months that I can do comedy without referring to my notes. And a weird thing, when I'm not referring to my brain injury, I remember my lines.
Well, yeah, I think that, you know, and the other thing too is that Maury Amsterdam many years ago told me, a wonderful man and a great joke writer. He once told me, he said, if you ever go up on your lines, if you're on stage, you ever go up on your lines, just keep talking and your brain will catch up. Just keep talking. You know, maybe you're if you're on TV or whatever, and maybe the next joke was going to be about marijuana. You know, let's just say, I'm just throwing something out here. Next joke was about marijuana, or they're going to legalize marijuana. And you didn't get the laugh you thought from the joke before. And that sometimes throws comedians, that you throw something out that always gets a laugh. And this night it didn't. Now it throws you for, geez, now you'll not think of your next line. What is your next line? He said, just keep talking and your brain will catch up. Like you'll say, you know, what I think now you go, anyhow, it's really nice to be here in this wonderful club. And it was, you know, it was raining on my way. Marijuana. Anyhow, it will come to you, you know. He said, but it's when people get in problems is when they stop on stage and they freeze and they start thinking, what's my next line? What's my next? Just keep talking and your brain will catch up. You know,
Cool.
is that a nice dress you're wearing? Well, that's nice. You know, I bought one at the store, and eventually it'll come back to, oh, you remember where your joke was going to be, you know. But the other thing too is, Linda,
Yes.
basic rule in show business, period. Have fun and the audience will have fun. If you're having fun up there, even when it's not working, they're okay. Their biggest fear is you're not going to do well. And then they vicariously hurt for you. They came to enjoy themselves, have fun. You walk up there and you got a big smile on your face and you're having fun. You're having fun with your material. Even when your material is not working, you're having fun up there, having fun with it. I don't care what's going on in your life, the divorce you're going through, the worries, the problems, you got the rents to do, whatever. When you walk on that stage, if you didn't come there to have fun, then don't go. Because if you have fun, the audience has fun with you.
Don't you love it when the crowd is hot and they're laughing, maybe watching you come to the mic and they're laughing just because something about you makes them laugh before you even speak?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, sure. You know, if you're an unknown comedian now, if you're working room where everybody knows who you are, there's nothing greater than that. There's 400 or 500 people in the room and they came to see you. Now that's really a great feeling. They know what to expect. You know, when you're a newcomer and they don't know who you are, then you have to come to the stage with that smile. You smile at them, they smile back at you. And then you start telling them your first 6 or 10 minutes of jokes are about you. You know, when I grew up here, so now after about 10 minutes, they say, oh, isn't she funny? And, you know, she was in the Army one time and, you know, and she works at the Stratosphere Hotel. I mean, whatever it is, you introduced yourself to this group with jokes. And now then you can go into what you don't like about the government or the airlines or whatever you want to argue. But in the beginning, I want to know who you are before I can, you know, open up my laughter to you. You know, laughter, by the way, is kind of personal. You know, I mean, a lot of people do not want to give you, and they don't want to laugh in front of you either. So to share that ha 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 ha, ha coming out of their body, they want to get to know you a little bit first. So tell them about where you grew up at, your childhood, your background, whatever it is. And now after about 10 minutes, she's so funny, and you know, and they know something about you, and then you can go anywhere you want to go.
Okay, I like that. So what do you think about comedians that come out and dance right up before, you know, or have the DJ play music and they dance or sing a few bars of a song and then go into their material? Well, I see a lot of people doing that.
Yeah, before my time, that's what they did. Way before my time, the old time comics, Jack Carter and those guys, they came out with a song. I'm happy, you're happy, I'm happy that you're happy. And they're doing, you know, and they got the audience kind of up and then they would go into their jokes, you know. But that was the old time. So that's nothing new. And maybe the kids say, whatever gets, you know, whatever floats your boat. There's only one rule in comedy. Be funny.
Cool.
Only rule in comedy, be funny. You're not going to be funny for everybody, but that's what you're there for. Be funny, you know. So that's the only rule. So whatever gets you on stage. Most comedians do not know. Frank Sinatra told me this, so I shouldn't take credit. He said most entertainers, Tom, do not know how to get on a stage and how to get off. You know.
Really?
Yeah, and there's a way to enter a stage properly, and the way you get off with that last show. How many times you've seen somebody who didn't know when to get off? They struggled through their set, and now they got them, and they got that one big lap, boom. Say goodnight, Gracie. Say goodnight. But no, they'll stay a little bit longer, and then you know it's no. Every sentence has a beginning, a middle, and an ending, and every act. When I had to do the Tonight Show, I had to do 6 minutes of new material each time I did it. I had to keep coming up with new material. So I made that set a beginning, a middle, and an ending. If I had to do 45 minutes, I had to have a beginning, a middle, and an ending. I do a 90-minute show now called An Evening of Laughter and Stories of Sinatra. It's stand-up comedy, but storytelling. But I got a beginning, a middle, and an ending. You know, and those are things you prepare for. You know.
Super. Hecklers. Let's get into hecklers. You probably don't even deal with them because you're at a level with so much experience that you would just ignore it and keep going. Am I correct?
No, if I get a heckler, first of all, you know, hecklers, years ago, hecklers were prevalent. I worked nightclubs before there were comedy clubs. And I'll tell you what, they would, in a nightclub, they would holler out stuff. Comedy clubs today, they make announcements. You know, if there's any hecklers in the room, we want you, please be quiet so others can enjoy the show. And we have a doorman that will immediately pull you out of there if you give a comedian a bad time, because the others came to have fun. And I'm okay with that. But when I started out, you better know how to handle hecklers, because, I work with all black clubs in the North and the South, what they call the Chitlin Circuit, black-owned, black-operated nightclubs. I've got an album in front of an all-black audience called That White Boy's Crazy, because I grew up in a predominantly black area. I shined shoes in taverns. I sat in some bodegas with other black kids. I played basketball on an all-black basketball team. I played football on an all-black football team. So my earlier routines were about that. So and Tim Reed and I were America's first black and white comedy team. So I worked black audience and black audience. If you weren't funny, they'd tell you, Richard Pryor's funnier than that. You better come up with something better than that. They would shout out, to you. So you had to learn how to roll with that. What's the Jewish word, tomo? Tomo? Is it tomeling? What do you call when people?
I don't know all the Jewish words, but I wasn't
it's a
really.
Yiddish word.
Yeah, I don't.
To tomo, to go with the flow or something like that. Anyhow,
Okay.
But I'll tell you I've had several heckler stories that I like. I'll tell you one. I was working at the Riviera Hotel, opening for Tony Orlando and Don, and it was packed, sold out night. And I had a guy down in front that was one of those, we in Italians, we call them gavons, he had the chains around his neck and he was souped down in the chair like he wasn't even interested. And he had two women with him, two girls on each side of him, one on each side, two gorgeous young girls. And I'm working, it's a big room, it's like 1,400 seater, and I'm working to the left and right. Every time I got near his table, the girls were laughing. And he'd be leaning down the chair. He said, "You like this guy? This guy sucks." And then I would I look at the guy. Now I make a point here. I tell young comedians, if somebody in a room that size is going to heckle you, and nobody else heard him but you and him, ignore the hell out of him. But if you're going to go to that heckler, then you got to repeat everything he said back through the microphone. You got to, because that way you got to qualify your heckler. He might be a nice guy saying, you might think he said, "You suck," but he might have said, "I love what you're doing." Sometimes you're on stage. So if you're going to go to him or her, whatever they say, you have to repeat back through the microphone so the back of the room knows who this person is. Now, it might be a nice person, and so you don't want to hurt him. But if you find out it's really an evil, drunken, pain in the ass kind of person, then you want to show the audience, this is a pain in the ass. This is a bad person. I want to break up the show. So the more you let him, you repeat what they keep saying, it also gives you a chance to think of comebacks. But what you do is now when the audience sees, you give them rope to hang themselves. When the audience sees that he's a jerk, then you nail him. And now the audience is on your side. But if you nail them too soon, you nail them right away, they don't know what you're talking about. Some guy will say, "You suck." Linda, "Oh yeah, what do you know? You don't know what you're talking about." Now, first of all, people didn't hear what he said. They only heard what you said. So you got to repeat everything they say. So now the whole room knows who it is, and just keep going till you get that one line that's going to nail them right. Now, and if you're going to do that in a big room. If you're in a small room, see, you don't have to go to this person if you're in a big room. But if you do, like I say, repeat it. If you're in a small room, everybody's heard it. So now you have to deal with it. If everybody in the back heard this person cursing, now still take your time with that person and repeat their lines so that it gives you a chance to think if you're in a small room, right? Now, this particular night at the Riviera Hotel, I'm in a big room and I've got the crowd going. I'm on a roll. I'm not going to ditch my show for this jerk down front who keeps saying this guy sucks, right? No. Oh. And the girls kept saying, "Oh, Tony, he's funny. He sucks. I can't." Now I work stage left. Whenever I got back near this guy, you'd say, "I can't believe you like this guy. This guy sucks," And I just looked at him and but I didn't let the room know what a jerk you were. Now, finally, the show's over. I get a big laugh. Everybody's applauding and cheering. And I say, "Good night, everybody." And you take a bow to stage left, center stage. And I take my last bow stage right before I exited. And I bowed right in front of this table. I bowed and I said to the girls, "You like this guy? This guy sucks." And I walked off the stage, Now, I nailed him. But if I would have done that at the beginning of the show, I had to ditch my whole show for this one guy, Now, that's one heckler story. Here's another heckler story, but a good guy. I'm working on new material at the Improvisation in LA one night. I've got to do another Tonite Show as we pointed out, I did 61 appearances on the Tonight Show. And every time you did the Tonight Show, you had to do a new 6 minutes. So you take your tape recorder to the club and you work on your new material. Well, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning and there's only like 15, 16 people in the room and they're scattered. And I'm working on new material in the back of the room that I can't see. But I threw a line out there and it got a laugh. He threw a line from the audience that got a bigger laugh. Now the audience laughed. I said, oh. So anyhow, I did a line and I got a laugh. The guy in the back throws another line, gets a bigger laugh. Now this is going on for a couple of minutes. I would do something, I can't see the guy sitting there. And he wasn't a mean guy. He was just funny. And whatever I said, he would top it. Finally, I did a line that got a laugh. He did a line that got a bigger laugh. Then I did a line to top that line, and it was the laugh of the night. It got the biggest applause and cheers. And I should have left this guy alone because I went. Instead, I left center stage and I looked in the darkness and I looked and I said to him, just between you and me, I won that one. And in the darkness, he said, just between you and me, you needed it.
Oh my gosh.
And got the biggest laugh of the night. Again, now when it's over with, I go outside off the stage and he's outside and he came up to me and said, gosh, I hope you're not mad at me. I said, oh no, are you kidding me? I said, it was wonderful. I said, are you a comedian? He said, no. I said, are you a writer? Do you write? He said, no. I said, you don't write comedy? He said, no, I just think funny. And I gave him my card. I remember this. He was from Aurora, Colorado. And I gave him my card. I said, look, if you ever think of funny stuff, here's my card. Would you send it to me? I'll buy from you jokes, because he's so clever. He said, yeah, thank you. And he never did. I never heard from him again. But again, that was a good heckler. It was fun. And that's a long story.
I love it. One time before I was thinking about getting on stage and doing comedy, and I was at an open mic at a comedy club, and the guy up there on the open mic was bombing really badly. And instead of just bombing, he was literally saying what was in his head into the microphone. He was like, oh, that sucks. Oh my God, I'm bombing. I should just go home and kill myself. And so I'm sitting there and I just blurted out, you know how you don't have a filter? And I just said, oh, hell, just make fun of us Jews. And so he did. The rest of his set was making fun of Jewish people.
Oh my gosh. Was he Jewish?
No, but I gave him permission. So I guess the crowd went with it.
See, that's the interesting thing. That people would think in comedy that only Jewish comics should talk about their Jewish upbringing, only Italian comics should talk about their Italian, only Black comics should talk about their Black upbringing. That's the nonsense. Do you know through comedy we find out how much we have in common? When the Jewish comedian would be up there and he's talking about his mom and his dad and his Uncle Sidney, I might say, well, I'm not Jewish, but you know what? My mom was like that. I had an uncle kind of like that. So what we find out through all of these culture that we have a lot more in common. That's what comedy is supposed to do, break down all them barriers that we have a lot in common. The thing is, again, I did an album in front of an all Black audience. When I did this was back in the early 80s. People said to me, you did an album in front of an all Black audience. Weren't you afraid? I said, what color is laughter? What's the color of laughter? I've worked all Jewish audiences in the North and the South. I worked all Italian, and today we're such a group of mixed, but still that people that even make a statement like that. What color is laughter? Funny is funny is funny,
Exactly.
Again, one rule, be funny,
I love doing comedy for Black audiences because all they want you to be is real. They don't want pretenses. Yeah. They just want you to just be real up there, and then they're on board, right?
Well, in any audience, there's no monolith. All Jews laugh at one thing, all Italians laugh at one thing. We're different personalities. Again, it's what color is laughter? The cancel culture out there today is trying to destroy comedy. You can't say this, and you can't say, oh no, you can't say that. Bullshit. You can say whatever you want to say. This is America. That's why men and women die. So you have that First Amendment right. Now, you don't have to listen to us. You can get up and walk out. You can turn us off if we're on TV, but you can't stop us from saying anything. And whenever they try to do that to me, cancel culture, I said, do me a favor, go tell Dave Chappelle. He's my hero. Go tell Dave Chappelle you can't say that. I dare you, because he'll stick it where the sun doesn't shine. Because you know why? He doesn't have to listen to you or anybody. He has the right to say whatever he wants to say anytime he wants to say it. Again, you don't have to listen to him. They put Lenny Bruce in jail, many years ago. You can't say this and you can't say that. You can say whatever you want to say. And by the way, watch out for those people, because the next thing is they'll tell you what you can think. Watch out for those people. That's all Marxist bullshit. That's they tell you what you can say, then they start telling you what you can think.
You're absolutely right with the Marxist point. Amen. Exactly. Yeah. So what's the legacy or legacies that you wanted to leave? Have you left everything, or are you still going after more legacy than you've already planned on leaving?
No, you know what? A couple of things. One is that one time I was working at Harrah's in Lake Tahoe with Sammy Davis at that time, before I toured with Frank, and George Burns was appearing next door at Caesars in Lake Tahoe, and I knew George, and I did the Dean Martin roast where we roasted George, and I knew his manager Irving Fine, and I was a big fan of Jack Benny my whole life, and I asked me that question later, why did you like Jack Benny? Could answer it, but I was a fan of his, and so I knew George. So I was going over to see him. He was 95 years old. I finished my show and I went over there. And George was 95 years old. He didn't run out to the microphone, but when he got out there, he did a strong hour and 10 minutes. And when the show was over, I went backstage afterward, and he was looking at some 3x5 cards like this. He was looking at some notes. I walked into his dressing room. He said, "Oh, hi, Tommy." He said, "I was working on some new material tonight." I said, "That's what I want to do. I want to be 95 years old working on new material. That's what I mean." So I want to, I just want, I'm glad that I made people laugh in my lifetime. And that's, Emerson said, "You've lived a good life if you leave this world better than you found it." I've tried to do that in so many ways. I ran marathons for multiple sclerosis because my sister Darlene had MS. So I called it 26 miles for Darlene. And people would pledge money for every mile I run. And so I've tried to give back with the charities and all that in my lifetime. So that isn't my legacy, but truthfully, Linda, I would hope that my tombstone would say he was a good father, because I didn't have a great father. I mean, he was a nice guy, but he was alcoholic. He was a docile guy, an alcoholic. But I want my children to be proud of me, and that would be the nicest thing you could ever say about me, was that he was a good father. That would mean a lot to me.
Wow. Tell me about your children. How old are they? How many do you have?
Oh, I have 3 children and I have 4 grandchildren. And now I just had a great grandchild born and another one coming. So I got married when I was very young, I was in the service, and me and this girl dated, and she got pregnant. And in those days you did what the right thing to do. You married her, and I don't regret that, because when the baby was born, I'll digress again. When I was in the service, I read literally hundreds of books on the powers of the mind. And that's why I give motivation speeches today, because I came from a negative background. I wanted to do a positive background. So I started reading all these books. But I remember when I'd read novels, sometimes I'd read, and I heard 2 words, unconditional love. And I thought, how can love be without conditions? There must be conditions to love. And then one day, and I never bought that, one day they handed me this little baby girl, my firstborn. And I understood at that moment what unconditional love is. I will love this child forever and ever and ever. And now she's a grown woman today. And as much as I loved her when I held her hand, held her in my arms, when she walks in the room today, I still get that same feeling, and she's got children of her own. But I feel that about all my kids. They're, I mean, this sounds like corny stuff, but I mean, that's just the way I feel, that's, as Frank would say, that's the Irish side of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just 1 second. Hi.
They have tables and stuff over at Starbucks if you want to go use that.
I would be glad to move over there. Okay. Absolutely. Thank you. I'll just get up and do that. Thank you so much.
Are we all done, Linda?
No, we're not. I'm moving to Starbucks. I'm just going to walk and talk with you.
Can
Unless,
you do that?
yes, I'm mobile. Unless you need to go, I'm still game to listen.
Okay, we can go maybe 5 or 10 more minutes if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. The security didn't want me sitting here, so I'm moving for them.
Well, that's rude of him. Did you tell him that you're interviewing a legend?
I know, what the heck? Just 1 second, Tom.
I am on a interview.
I'm here. I'm just walking in it. I can't touch the screen yet. Okay, now I'm here with the cursor.
Wow. I think it even sounds better there. What do you think?
I think so too, because I have better Wi-Fi reception. Hi, Tom. I have moved. Now I'm compliant. Here we are at the stratosphere. In the bright lights. So what do you want to say for the final 5 or 10 minutes that you're on here? You get to pick what you sent me a bunch of photos and you told me you'd explain to me where to put those in the video.
Well, you know, are you going to are you taping this and you're going to run it again? So you're going to edit it?
Yes, I'm going to have my technical person insert photos, and you sent me quite a few pictures, and they came in 3 or 4 emails. So do you want to tell me things about the photos at this point? Is that a good place to go?
First of all, we talked about Frank Sinatra, so you have pictures of me and Frank Sinatra. You can use your own discretion or your technical person. We talked about Tim Reed and I being America's first black and white comedy team, so you have pictures of that. We talked about my first appearance on the Tonight Show. Oh, I know. Here, I'll tell you a story. You have a picture of. Let me go back to a story. Like you just asked me this question: what was your first appearance on the Tonight Show like? Tell if you want to ask me that question. Okay.
Yes. What really, seriously, I do want to know what in the world was going through your head before, and what was it like, and how did it go? What was that experience?
Well, as I explained, that in those days, wherever you went in America, you know, people say, you know, what did you do for a living? You say, I'm a stand-up comedian. Have you ever been on Johnny Carson? Now, in those days, in 1972, Johnny Carson moved to the West Coast and started broadcasting on the West Coast. So by 1975, everybody knew one appearance on the Tonight Show. Freddie Prinze did one appearance. He got a sitcom the next day. So the pressure was on. When you got to the Tonight Show, in those days, 26 million people watched the show. So when you finally got there, and you struggled for a long time to get that audition, and you finally passed the audition, and now you're going to be on. And this could change your whole life. I was drawing unemployment. I had a wife and 3 kids. I was on my rear end. This is going to be my big break. So, you know, when I went there and they bumped me 3 times, every time I'd go there, I'd be in makeup. They'd take you up to your, after makeup, take you up to your dressing room, then bring you down to the green room. And then they ran out of time. They'd take you, next time I went there a week later, they put me in makeup, took me up to the dressing room, back down to the green room. They ran out of time. This happened 3 times in a row. And as I pointed out earlier, that 4th time, Fred DeCordova came in the makeup room and he said, I got bad news for you. I said, what? He said, you're going on tonight. Now, the pressure, you come from the green room, you know, on that night was Bert Convy and Carol Burnett. And Carol Burnett was making them laugh. And Bert Convy was in the middle of the song. They came and got me and said, you follow that song. We'll go to commercial break after the song and you're on after that. When you're taking that long walk from the green room all the way around to the curtain to get behind that curtain stagehands are there. And when I became a veteran, they would go, hey, Dreesen, how you doing? How's your Cubs? Hey, Tommy, you know. But when you're new, it's your first time. As I was walking by, they all were whispering. They turned their back and they whispered, it's his first time. It's his first time, because the pressure is enormous. When you get behind that curtain, the music's playing, Doc Severinson's playing because they're in commercial break. And it's dark back there. And the coordinator says, you okay? And you say, yeah. And his name was Craig Tennis, nice guy. He said, you know, okay, I'll leave you alone. He takes off. And now you're all alone and you're back there and the music's playing. And now you're going, oh God, what's my first line? Oh God, you know, 26 million people are watching the show. All the talent coordinators, all the buyers from Vegas, they're all watching this show in those days. And not only that, my mother had everybody back in Harvey, Illinois watching. So if I bomb, I can't even go back home. So now the music stops and your heart stops because they're out of commercial and the curtains light up. And you hear Johnny say, we're back now. And I'm glad you're in such a good mood tonight, because my next guest is making his first appearance on the Tonight Show. Will you welcome, please, Tom Dreesen? Now that one line, I'm glad you're in such a good mood tonight. Johnny set that audience up. It's his first time. They open up the curtain. You walk out into these bright lights. You can't see the audience. They're all in the darkness. All you see is the camera with the red light on, and you hit your mark on the floor that they told you to walk to before the show. There's a mark there. Hit that mark. Whoa, and they're applauding. And now I got the first joke out. It got a laugh. I got the second joke out. It got a laugh. I got the third joke. It got a laugh. I got the fourth joke, and Johnny's laughing, and Ed McMahon's laughing. Now the audience is applauding. Now I got 8 applause in my stand-up. Now it's time to go. And I said, this is, you know, a wonderful audience. This is my first appearance on the Tonight Show. And show business is a tough life. So if you liked me, just if you liked me and you're Protestant, say a prayer. If you're Catholic, light a candle. If you're Jewish, somebody in your family owns a nightclub. Tell them about me, will you please? And I walked off stage. Now it got a big laugh, and the coordinator come running around the corner. He said, go back, go back. I said, go back and buy Johnny. No, don't go buy Johnny, go back. I walked back through the curtain and they still were applauding, and Johnny does that little thing with a circle. You know, great job, you know. And I went back to the curtain and I never stopped working from that night. Now, I say that to you about the picture because there's a picture of me in a coat with the big lapels. That was me on my first appearance on the Tonight Show.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Now that would go there. But now, here's the other story that you want to tell. After I did that, you know, to America, I had arrived because I did my first appearance on the Tonight Show. But to my industry, I hadn't arrived. Not to the people in show business until you sat down and talked to Johnny. So when you sat down and talked to Johnny, that's when you arrived. You know, and Johnny didn't let you at your first appearance. He wanted to make sure that he thought you had longevity. So on my third appearance, Johnny called me over, and I think you have a picture of me sitting next to Johnny there. And now, here's what I'll tell you, because you show that picture of Johnny laughing at me. Okay? Now, here's what I'll tell you about that. One of the books I read when I was, aboard ship about positive mental attitude, I read a book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. Whatever the mind can see and believe it will achieve was written thousands of years ago. I think it's biblical in nature. Whatever the mind can see and believe it will achieve. And they tell you to do that just before you go to sleep at night and just when you wake up in the morning, because that's when your conscious mind is most at rest and your subconscious mind is open to suggestion. And it works off of images. Whatever you see and believe. That's why when you say, gee, what was his name? What was his name? Doggone it, what was his name? What was his name? And you send a picture back to your subconscious mind with an emotion. What was his name? What was his name? 2 days later, you say, give me a cup of coffee, Tom Dreesen. Where did that come from? Once you gave the subconscious mind a problem, it never rests till it finds a solution. So, and it works off of these images, whatever the mind can see and believe. And it's been around for thousands of years. That picture you saw of Johnny Carson. When I was sleeping in the abandoned car that I talked about earlier, hitchhiking up and down Sunset Boulevard, begging to work for free at the Comedy Store, and I couldn't even get on at the Comedy Store. Every night in that car, I would envision Johnny Carson talking to me, saying, you're a funny guy, Tom Dreesen. You're a funny guy. I would envision that end result I wanted. Because if I was sitting there talking to Johnny, I'd already succeeded over there in stand-up. Because Johnny didn't call you over till you succeeded. So I would see that, feel that, and believe it, as the book taught me. Whatever the mind can see and believe will achieve. When I'm giving motivation speeches, I hold up that picture that you have of Johnny Carson laughing at me. That's the picture I imaged in my mind when I was sleeping in the abandoned car. Nothing can become a reality unless it's thought first. Everything you see in front of you, your microphone, that computer, that chair, that table, those glasses you're wearing, they were thoughts before they became realities. And the same thing applies to your life. You have to see the end result you want, because, and it might, maybe you say, I don't know what I want in life. Well, then see your mom or your brother or your aunt or somebody saying, gosh, Linda, what a great success you are. You finally achieved all your dreams. See that, feel that, and believe that. We're having a party for you tonight because you are such a success. See that, feel that, and believe that. I say that because this body you have is your vehicle, you know, and it needs a flight plan. The pilot who lands the 747 every day in Boston, flies from LA to Boston, he doesn't drive to the airport 100 miles an hour, drive out on the tarmac, slam on the brakes, run aboard the aircraft, take off down the runway and say, now where am I going? He files a flight plan, or she files a flight plan, because there's female pilot. So this is your vehicle right here. It needs a flight plan. Once it sees and you feel it and believe it where you want, it said, okay, now I know where you want me to go. The book is called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. And it's a book that everyone should read, especially those in our business.
Okay.
Now,
Joseph Murphy?
Yeah, Joseph Murphy, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Now, I'll close with this. For all you comedians out there, I want you to know how important you are. And you've never been more important than you are now. How important you are, because you bring laughter to the world. And you know, not everyone can do that. You bring laughter, and laughter is healing. Now, let me tell you a few things I know. Many years ago, the insurance companies of America did research for 8 years around the world on the 10 fears of man. Death was fourth, pain was second, getting up in front of an audience was the number one fear of mankind. So if you're a house painter or a truck driver or a lawyer, and you can get up and talk about your profession for 1 hour, whatever you are, you're in less than 1% of the population of the world. If you can get up and make people laugh for a half an hour or an hour, you're in less than 1/1,000,000th of 1% of the population of the world. You know how special you are that you can do that. You know, and so if they could do that, audiences, they would do it, but they can't. That's why we're the comedians. And laughter is healing. Now, it's not a theory anymore. Because of a man named Norman Cousins. Norman Cousins was dying of a terminal illness. He wrote a book called Laughter Math. He wrote another book called The Anatomy of an Illness. He was dying from a terminal illness, a heart condition. The doctors told him in the hospital he didn't have long to live because of this serious heart condition that was given to him because of stress in his life. He laid in the hospital and he thought, if stress, negative input made me ill, then positive input should make me well. So he checked out of the hospital and he'd only watch I Love Lucy reruns, Candid Camera, Three Stooges, the Marx Brothers. He would listen to comedy albums. He never listened to evening news, didn't buy the newspaper. He laughed himself to health. He lived 27 years after the doctors told him he was going to die. Because of him, UCLA did research. They've always known that laughter is psychologically a deterrent, that the brain can't think of two things at the same time. So if you're watching a comedian and laughing, you're not thinking of your problem. So it's a psychological deterrent. But because of Norman Cousins, they did research on what happens to the human body when it laughs heartily. When you have one of those heavy laughs, and after the laugh, tears come running down your eyes, and you go, oh, and a sense of well-being comes over you. It's because your body's gone through an actual chemical change. Endorphins are released from the brain into the bloodstream. So the body's going through an actual chemical change. So laughter is not only psychologically a deterrent, it's physiologically therapeutic. Therefore, comedians are physicians of the soul. Dr. Linda?
Thank you.
So all of you out there that are stand-up comedians, it's a God-given gift. Don't tarnish it. Don't fill your brain with chemicals. Don't fill your brain with drugs, because that's the gift you have. You know, don't tarnish that gift you have. You bring joy and health to our society, and they need it more than ever now. You are so important.
Thank you so much, Tom Dreesen. I do comedy at VA hospitals. I just do it on my own. I go in and say, where are they at? How many can I make laugh? And I try to get shows going. I've done it on up and down the West Coast and in New York City.
Good.
But I get a lot of pushback. Thank you. I get a lot of pushback. I just wanted to tip you off that they'll try to tell me that you might trigger a veteran. And I'm like, do you want to come up with another word besides trigger? Because if you're saying trigger, it might trigger someone with that, you know, like you might be doing a lot more triggering than I am. And so I finally get them to let me do jokes, but it's an uphill battle to get the VAs to let me do comedy. What do you have to say about that? And I'll let you go.
Yeah, well, again, laughter should go where laughter is needed. That's where laughter should go. It's where laughter is needed. And you know what? And you're going to get a lot of resistance. And by the way, that's why the title of my book is still standing, because I've been knocked down. I've been told to go back. I've been told that you'll never make it. Give yourself a regular job. I've been knocked down. I've been rejected like all comedians have. And I'm still standing because I don't take no for an answer,
I'll buy your book, and I'll encourage other people to buy your book.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Linda.
I will buy it.
Well, that's
Thank you for your time, and thank you for serving humankind.
I'm honored to be here. I'm blessed. I'm a blessed man. God has been so good to me. And when you read the last chapter in my book, you'll realize how good God has been to me.
Wonderful. I can't wait. I'm going to buy it today.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. And I guess that's it. And I wish you the best in all your endeavors. And when you edit this down and put everything in, let me know. I think the pictures I gave you, if your guy is astute and you are too, you'll look over all the stories and say, oh, that picture matches that story. That picture matches this story,
Absolutely. If we happen to not be as astute as we think we are, we'll let you know what we have a question about.
Okay, be glad to. Okay.
Thank you, Tom
Take
Dreesen.
care. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you. God bless.
God bless you.
Bye.
Every